Last week, it was so fun going back and comparing two of our favorite 80s movies, St. Elmo's Fire and Breakfast Club.
Sister, I agree. I had actually wanted to rewatch them side by side for a long time. And didn't you think it was interesting to look at those two movies, especially from like our life and current times, right?
Yes, and I think it changed the way we looked at them a little bit.
Oh, for sure. I definitely looked at them differently now than I did in high school.
I appreciated both films more now than I did back then.
Yeah. But today, sister, we are shifting gears to a film that tugs at the heartstrings. We have such a treat for our real fans. And y'all, if you missed this film during your time in the 1980s, you have to see it now.
I'm Amanda.
And I'm Missy, and this is Real Sisters Rewind.
Join us as we go back to the 80s. Welcome to Real Sisters Rewind, back to the 80s, a podcast for people who love movies and wish they were as good now as they were back then. If this is your first time joining us, we are sisters who love great films and think some of the very best are from the 80s decade. We are rewatching and reliving some of our best movie memories. I'm Amanda.
And I'm Missy. And if you're enjoying this podcast, please give Real Sisters Rewind a 5-star rating on your podcast app and subscribe and review to help new people find the show, right? We're going to send out Real Sisters stickers. That's hard to say, Amanda, for 5-star reviews. So if you're leaving us a thumbs up type of review, take a screenshot and email us at hello@realsistersrewind.com so that we can make sure to get you one of our new cool stickers.
That's right. Thanks, Missy. Today, we're talking about the heartfelt and emotional movie, Steel Magnolias. This film is a beautiful portrayal of friendship, strength, and resilience among a group of Southern women. But before we dive into the story, let's set the scene and go back in time with what was happening in the world when this movie was released and some fascinating facts about this iconic film.
Okay, Amanda, before we get into what was going on in the world, do you remember what you were doing when Steel Magnolias came out? And I'll tell you, it was November 15th, 1989 that it came out.
Well, in November, we would have been looking forward to Thanksgiving, obviously. But I don't remember what I was doing exactly, but I do remember seeing this movie in theaters. I know it was with Mom. And I'm guessing probably you, I feel like it was something we would have all seen together.
Mm-hmm.
And I really remember going to the movies to see it. And speaking of seeing it in the movies, I'm sure we had popcorn, and I had popcorn again watching it.
How did you have your popcorn?
So this time I did popcorn with ranch. And just so our real fans know, my popcorn is always buttered popcorn. So it was buttered popcorn.
Okay.
And when I say ranch, not salad dressing, ranch seasoning packet.
Yes. Okay. So I had popcorn when I watched it this time as well. I had popcorn when I watched it the first time in theaters. I can't wait to tell you about that. But I had ranch and paprika. Smoked paprika mixed with that ranch is so good. And no, this is not a commercial for ranch or paprika. It's just the way we like our popcorn, but it could be. No, I'm just teasing. Okay, so Amanda, in November 15th of 1989, I can tell you I was in love. I was in love with Chris Washam, and I was thinking that someday soon he was going to be proposing to me. And I do remember exactly the first time I saw it. It was over Thanksgiving, but I saw it in Shreveport, Louisiana with Chris's mom and aunt and sister
Oh,
in the theater. And then when I came back, I think I told you guys, we've got to go see this. And you and mom and I saw it in the theater as well.
yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Well, connected to your love of Chris Washam, more vividly than seeing it in the theater, I vividly remember when we went to pick you up at the airport after your honeymoon in the white,
Mexico.
mhm, that you forgot your luggage, in the
I didn't forget it. My new husband did.
in the that white van that we had that had a TV
Yes.
and a VCR, we watched
Yes.
the VHS of Steel Magnolias on the way to pick y'all up. I remember that. That's like the most vivid memory of rewatching it that I
Ah,
can.
that's great. Well, I will say, just FYI, the movie came out on November 15th, and I did get engaged on December 3rd. So it was a fun, fun time to have this movie kind of in your world, right?
Mhm. Definitely. All right. So, what was going on in the world when it hit theaters? We know what was going on in our world because we just talked about that. So, one thing is that the Berlin Wall fell on November 9th, which was just a few days before the film's release, making it a pretty significant moment in history and the beginning of the end of the Cold War.
Okay, I know I'm not going crazy. When we recorded Dirty Dancing, I think you were just saying that
Yes,
Reagan was calling Gorbachev for this. Yes?
yes,
It's so
absolutely.
interesting that this next review happened when it came down. That's so weird.
I
Like,
know it is weird. But it's because the 80s it was all about the Cold War and Reagan and tear down this wall and the Soviet Union and all that. So
yeah,
it's all
yeah.
related.
1989, sister, was also the year that George H.W. Bush was inaugurated as the 41st president of the United States. And the music scene was buzzing with hits like, I loved the song, Like a Prayer by Madonna, and We Didn't Start the Fire by Billy Joel.
I loved that song. But what I do remember is that Like a Prayer was so controversial. Not I don't know that necessarily the song was, but the video. I remember being in our old house. I think we were at our old house. Anyway, I remember mom and some of her sister, I don't remember if it was both of them, but they had this whole conversation about that video and it was a big deal.
That's so funny. They probably didn't want your little eyes to see it. Well, as we're talking about those two songs, I'll tell you, I can't hear We Didn't Start a Fire without thinking about one of our favorite television shows of all time, The Office. Do you know what I'm talking about? When
Yes,
Ryan
yes,
started the fire and Dwight
yes.
started singing, Ryan started the fire, but he didn't hide it because Dwight did find it.
Yes, I do her. It's
Oh
hysterical.
my gosh. Oh, that is so funny.
Well, on the tech front, get ready for this. Buckle up, Buttercup. The World Wide Web
Oh my
was
gosh.
invented, and it was invented by Tim Berners-Lee, and that was setting the stage for the internet age that we are living in now. And actually, now that I'm thinking about it, that's a lot earlier than I realized that the World Wide Web was coming on the scene.
Yeah, I definitely don't remember talking about the World Wide Web at that point. But boy, did it change our lives. Look at the difference of the, late 80s into the 90s and now, of course, into the 2000s with what we're able to do on a phone. On a phone from a car, I can be on a video conference and it's crazy.
Yeah, and I have a lot of mixed feelings about it. I'm like, if we could not have it, would we be better? I don't know.
I don't know. Okay, well, let's get to some fascinating facts about Steel Magnolias. And I
Yes,
have
there's a
to
lot.
say there are, and I'm shocked by the amount of people. So I don't think it's a fascinating fact, but if you don't know it, perhaps you do. But there are a lot of people who don't know, Amanda, that this is based on a true story.
I know. I know. And it's just, I don't know, it makes it such a more it makes it all the more touching to me when you know
Yes.
it's based on a true story, even though it's great regardless. But Robert Harling wrote the play as a tribute to his sister, Susan Harling Robinson, and she passed away, which we know, if you've seen the movie, passed away from complications related to diabetes. And just knowing that her brother wrote it touches my heart even more. Like, not even her sister, it was her brother.
I know. I know. And I have to say, we are super excited to have a special guest on our podcast today. Um, we had the opportunity to get to talk with someone who grew up in the area and a very close friend to the family. Her name is Jacki Giesey.
Yeah, it was so great to talk with her. Let's share a little bit of that interview now.
Okay. Well, hello, real fans. We have got a really special treat for you today. We have a special guest named Jacki Giesey. Yes, like the geese flying. And she grew up in Natchitoches, Louisiana, where our story, Steel Magnolias, is set. She actually is, I guess you could call her, Amanda, an expert on Louisiana because she does work at one of the Louisiana Welcome Centers, welcoming guests with that Southern hospitality from all over the country and maybe even world. But
Absolutely.
we are so glad to have you here with us today, Jacki. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Well, good. Well, Amanda, why don't you kick us off? I've gotten to have a conversation with Jacki, but I know that you're dying to jump in and begin the question. So why don't you kick us off, sister?
I am so excited, Jacki, because this story has been such a part of my whole entire life. And I always knew that this was based on a true story. And so that made it even more fascinating for me,
Mm-hmm.
because it just felt so much like how I grew up and my people. And so I have just always been so very curious. So
Yes,
I'm
it's a good
wondering,
story.
we know that obviously in the movie, it's in the fictional Chickapin Parish, but it's really in real life took place in Natchitoches, which is where you grew up, as Missy said. And so could you tell us a little bit about what it was like growing up in Natchitoches and how you came to know the family that Steel Magnolias is actually based on?
Sure. Well, and maybe interesting is I've always been told that Natchitoches in Native American meant chinkapin eater, which was a nut. So that's where the chinkapin came from.
That is so cool to
Wow.
know. Thank you.
I did grow up in Natchitoches, and I knew the Harling family from church. Susan, the Shelby character in the movie, was for me, she was always a grown-up, but when she passed away, I realized she was only about 6 years older than me, which blew my mind. But she was our junior choir director when she was probably 18 or 19 years old. And I have a really cool picture of us as kids with her in our little choir robes with the big bows.
Oh.
And, so it was really, really sweet. And it was my dad had made Polaroids. And so when I found it years later, I made copies for all the people that I was still in contact with. And every now and then they'll pop up on Facebook.
Oh, that is precious. The old Polaroid camera. If that doesn't date us, nothing does, right?
Oh, gosh, yeah. We thought we were something. But now I knew the Harlings. Bob, or Bobby, as we knew him, he was very much a grown-up. In fact, he may have been in college a good bit of the time that I knew him as a kid. I didn't really know him at that time. I mean, I knew who he was, but that was about it. I knew the younger brother, John, who was a little bit younger than me. He was my brother's age. And we just, like I said, we went to church together. The Harlings were a really, really sweet family. He worked, I believe it was for International Paper Company, and she was a nurse. And at least in the last few years, she did work in the mental health unit, which is mentioned in the movie.
Oh, that's right.
I don't know exactly what she did, but luckily I didn't ever need to go to her. So I don't know exactly. I don't know exactly what her capacity was in that regard. But yes, but I did know him, and I did know, like I said, I saw Susan occasionally. One of my memories of Susan that stands out was her wedding. I was at her wedding.
Yes.
And I just remember she, most people go that real step together, slow up the aisle. Susan practically ran up the aisle.
Oh, because she was so excited or nervous?
I guess so. I guess she was just, she was just so excited to be there, I guess. But yeah, so that was one of my memories. Was just, I don't know why it stood out, but it did at the time. I was in college. I remember thinking, wow, that's she really flew up there. But
that is so funny. I have to ask you, Jacki, were her colors blush and bashful?
That does not. I don't remember that being. It certainly was not a sanctuary bathed in pink. I can tell you that. But they may have had pink bridesmaids dresses. I honestly have no memory of that whatsoever.
Oh,
I probably
great.
didn't know the girl, so I didn't pay any attention to that. I suspect, but don't know that was him making something a little more comical and interesting.
Yeah, a little exaggeration. Well,
I was wondering that too. I bet, I'm just thinking about when you said she was y'all's junior choir director. I bet that y'all thought that she was just like so
hung
cool.
the moon.
Yeah, just
amazing. Yes. I mean, she was very sweet. She wasn't really shy, but she was a little soft spoken. She was very talkative. She was very friendly, but she just had a softer way. And it just, like I said, I never dreamed she wasn't a grown up. I was about 11, and like I said, when she died, I was so shocked how close in age we were.
Yeah,
to me,
because you had looked up to her. Almost like a mentor, right? Yeah. Because she was working in the church choir. I love it.
Oh my gosh! Oh, absolutely. It never occurred to me she was well, now I think of it as a kid, but at the time certainly did not.
Yeah, certainly.
But and I remember, I didn't really remember her as a majorette in high school, but she was. Oh. And I remember that because I did majorette, but I remember hearing her mother had to sew a little pocket of some sort in her uniform for, I guess it was like candies in case she had an episode.
Yeah.
Huh.
And
how resourceful is that? Like just shows how smart that mama was.
When she would go on like youth group things, and of course diet soda was practically non-existent at the time, and they would have to, find something special for her, that she could have.
Yeah.
So they had some sort of, I don't know what it was, but they would find something like that. So, she always had her challenges. And I do remember when the baby was born, and he was in, I guess it was NICU for quite a while, because I believe he was born quite early.
Oh, I have not heard that. I hadn't heard
Yeah.
that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask
Robert's
you.
probably in he's probably in his late 30s or early 40s by now, so he definitely got out of there.
Yeah,
He grew.
he grew. Well, actually, I was
Mhm.
actually going to say, we know that Robert Harling, or Bobby, as you call him, we know he wrote
Yeah.
Steel Magnolias, but can you share about anything you might know about the inspiration behind the story and how he decided to turn it into a play, which the play came first? Is that correct?
Sure. Yes. My understanding is yes. What I have always heard, and it's been so many years, I don't remember if his mother and my mother were friends, so that may have been where I got my information. Is that when Susan died, he was just, of course, heartbroken.
Yeah.
And he started writing, I guess, stories or notes for the baby. So he would know his mom. Because he was only about 2 when she died.
Yeah.
And having been in theater, he began hearing dialogue. And so he began, and I don't really think he meant to do anything with it from my understanding, but he began writing it as a play and adding the various stories. And I was told by his mom that he was convinced Susan was his guardian angel. Because as soon as it got hit the print, every actress on Broadway, including some who weren't typically Broadway actresses, Hollywood people, were just clamoring for parts.
Okay,
I've
got my tissue ready here.
Me
Keep
too.
going. I didn't
Yeah,
mean
me
to interrupt you, but
I
what were
know
you
Betty
saying
Davis was
about?
clamoring for the Weezer character. I know Elizabeth Taylor wanted to be Malin.
Oh, wow.
And all this was, he was way off Broadway, and it was just like everything just happened so quick that he was just convinced that Susan was just pushing it through from heaven.
Yes, don't you know that's the truth? And tell me, when we were talking before, Jacki, you said that when you happen to be talking about this movie with anyone, that you always tell them to watch it to the final credits. You've got to tell my sister what you told
Yeah,
me, and believe me,
you
I'm
definitely gonna
grabbing.
make me cry now.
I know I'm definitely
Yeah,
grabbing extra tissue.
The very, very end, when the Enel goes into labor and they jump in the van, and the car and the motorcycle, and they're riding through town to get to the hospital, which ironically they were truly on the way to the hospital in Natchitoches. They were taking the correct route. You watch the credits, which I know a lot of people, unless you know somebody, you don't always pay attention to the credits. But after all the credits, at the very end, it says, "To Susan, love, Bob."
Oh, gosh. I loved talking with Jacki and hearing her perspective and really learning, Amanda, about Susan, AKA Shelby, from someone who had literally grown up influenced by her.
Yeah, it was really special. She, being so close to the family and knowing Susan and just hearing about her as a person, brought her character to life for me even more. It was a special interview. I really appreciate her joining us.
Yes. And it was so special that we are going to drop the entire interview as a bonus episode. So you've got to check it out. You'll laugh, you'll cry, and you will, learn about the true relationships and friendships that were portrayed on the big screen and
And
in a play too. Yeah.
And you might even want to go visit Natchitoches if you never have.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Might inspire you. Well, one thing that I thought about is that, Robert Harling named the play Steel Magnolias, which really reflects not only the main character's delicate yet strong nature, beautiful like magnolias, but tough as steel. And it really reminds me of the women that we grew up with, to be honest.
Yes, I love how you described that. I didn't think about that. in the title, but I did when I rewatched it for like the fourth time since we've been preparing for this podcast. When I rewatched it actually today at the end of the movie, Sally Field says something about um, men being tough as steel. And so I guess it is kind of that dichotomy of a fragile woman, but still really, really strong.
Yeah, they're the ones that hold it together for everyone.
Right. The film had a runtime of an hour and 57 minutes, and it was rated PG. And it was made of a budget of about 15 million, but it ended up grossing almost 97 million worldwide.
It was directed by Herbert Ross and features an all-star cast that must have just blown the socks off the people of Natchitoches when these people started rolling in. So we had Julia Roberts, who plays the main character, Shelby, and this was one of her earlier breakout roles. She received a Golden Globe and an Oscar nomination for her performance, marking this, like I said, as one of her breakout roles. I know it wasn't her first movie, but it was probably one of her biggest early on.
I've heard about Mystic Pizza, which I
Mhm.
hadn't seen at the time, but I know she even had some others. But this is the first movie I remember seeing her in. And I have to tell you, Amanda, I fell in love with her then, and I still love her today. I love me some Julia Roberts.
Yeah, I know. Me too. Me too. It really set the tone, I think, for her career. But one thing I wanted to say as we were talking about Herbert Ross is that I read that he was especially critical of yeah, of these women. He was a really tough director. Like it was a tough,
Mm.
um, he was really tough on them. And that they had a bit of a rocky relationship with him. And I read that at one point, and this isn't word for word, but the banter basically was he was aggravated in a scene with Dolly Parton and he asked her if she knew how to act. And she replied, "No, but it's your job to make it look like I can."
Oh my gosh. And Amanda, that's crazy because she had already filmed like 2 or 3 films. Like she was in 9 to 5 because that was early 80s. That's
Yep.
what I want to do. She was in The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas, and there was one other one with Sylvester Stallone in it. Oh, it was Rhinestone. And all those movies, she got very positive reviews.
Yeah. Well, I think he was hard on all of them.
Oh,
But
gotcha.
I think the funny thing about that comment, that banter between the two of them, is I can just see her saying that. Well,
Oh,
no,
yeah.
but that's what you're supposed to, that's what you're here for.
That's right. Has Papa ever told you the story about, um, spending time with Dolly Parton when he lived up in Tennessee?
Yes. I love that. I
I know
love that.
so our papa knew Dolly growing up and just has lots of stories about her humility and how funny she was growing up. So maybe we shouldn't share any of those without asking yet, but maybe by the time we do 9 to 5, we'll have some stories to share. Maybe we could get Papa on, Amanda, to
Yes.
share a story. I don't know if he'll share that story, but maybe he will. But
That would be
anyway,
fun. That would be fun.
it would be. Speaking of positive reviews, Steel Magnolias actually had several award nominations besides what you had already mentioned about Julia Roberts. Sally Field was actually nominated for Best Actress in a Motion Picture Drama at the Golden Globes.
And I think she should have won. I still
Yes.
stand by it today. If you grew up in the South, you knew a mama like Malin. Like
We had a mama like Malin.
well, yeah, that was our mom, but like you knew one. Like she
Absolutely.
is the quintessential Southern mama.
Yeah, and although the film itself, it didn't receive any nominations, it, as we know, quickly became just this beloved classic, right? Especially for those of us who love heartfelt stories about strong women and their deep friendships and laughter, and even as I'm saying it, and just a good cry.
Well, save your tears, Missy, because there's a lot more to come.
I know.
Let's head on down to Louisiana and jump into the unforgettable world of Steel Magnolias.
Yes. And everybody grab your Kleenex. You're going to need them. Here we go.
Steel Magnolias is set in the fictional area of Chickapin Parish, Louisiana. For those of you who don't know, Louisiana has parishes, not counties, although it's the same thing. We call them parishes, so Chickapin Parish. And it is actually set in the town of Natchitoches, Louisiana.
It was
So
actually filmed there.
yeah, and it was actually filmed there, and that's where the family actually is from in real life.
Yeah.
And as we've mentioned, it revolves around a close-knit group of women who regularly gather at Truvy's Beauty Spot, which is a locally owned beauty salon. And that just reminds me more of like what I just said. If you grew up in the South, you knew a Malin. And if you grew up in the South, especially in a smaller town, you probably had a beauty shop, or your mama or your grandma had a beauty shop.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes, absolutely. And Amanda, talking about it being filmed in Louisiana, Chris and I actually lived not too far from Natchitoches. We lived in Washita Parish in the Monroe, West Monroe area for 15 years. Chris was a professor at ULM. I taught school there. And I loved seeing all the snippets in the movie that were nods to Louisiana culture, which is Southern, but it's also got its
Different.
own flair, right? Which you know,
Yes.
because you're down in the heart of it now in New Orleans. But one of the things I was going to say, it tickled me watching the movie because in one of the scenes, Shelby's talking to Weezer about meeting a man that Weezer knew when she was young. And she says, and that they attend together First Presbyterian of Monroe. And when Chris and I married and moved, we went to First Presbyterian of Monroe. So I thought that was cool.
How far is Monroe from Natchitoches?
I think about an hour and a half.
Oh, much closer than me. I'm like 5 hours.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
okay.
Well, the film opens in the springtime. It's around Easter, and we know this because we see decorations around the town. We see wreaths on doors. We see pus-colored eggs, right? But the focus is on the excitement of Shelby's wedding day. And as you said earlier, Amanda, Shelby, of course, is our main character, and she is played by Julia Roberts. And she is the beautiful, spirited daughter of Malin, brilliantly played by Sally Field.
And just to let our real fans know, don't worry, because like I said, I think Sally Field is just the epitome of a Southern mom in this film. I'm going to just go ahead and add this to the petition for
Oh my
Steven
God.
Spielberg winning the Oscar for E.T. We're just going to go ahead and add Sally Field that she should have won also. So we'll just have 2 of those going out.
You've got to be like Elsa. Let it go. Let it go.
I can't. They're too good. But these wedding preparation scenes are filled with Southern charm and humor. And I'm telling you, it is so real.
It is.
It is so real. We've got Shelby's dad, Drum, played by Tom Skerritt, who is hilariously trying to shoot birds out of the trees, which we'll hear a little bit about in our interview.
Yes.
To keep them from disturbing Shelby's wedding reception.
That's right.
And we see Shelby's brothers who are causing mischief, and they're plotting to cover her wedding car with condoms. And it's just really lively and chaotic because it's just a lot going on that day, and they're getting ready for the big reception that's going to be in the backyard. And so there's just chaos happening. But it really sets the tone for the deep connections and outlandish personalities of the characters in this film.
It does.
And just watching this opening scene, I already start crying because it's so real and just reminds me of my childhood when we would have events at our house. Now, it wasn't necessarily super chaotic feeling, but kind of. I mean, there was a lot going on in the preparations, and it just felt it felt so true.
Yes, and when we had something at our house, mom and daddy wanted to have it done right. Like, he might not ever care if our long driveway was swept, but if we were having a shindig, as we say in the South, at our house, and we had some parties, we had some
We had some
weddings at our house.
weddings.
I know, but I can remember he would get one of those big brooms, like, off of one of the sites, one of the construction sites, and I'd have to you were too young, but I would have to sweep off the long driveway, and I would just complain, but I loved watching mom and her friends, by the way,
And our
prepare,
aunts.
and our aunts, yeah, which I guess I was just kind of clumping them in as friends, watching them prepare and take such pride and the hustle and bustle of it all, and I'm tearing up. I'm tearing up too
I
thinking
know.
about it.
It's so, I mean, it's so true.
One of the key moments in the film is when Jackson, who's Shelby's fiance, and he's played by Dylan McDermott, he sneaks into her bedroom while she's in the bath. And they have a sweet conversation where Shelby admits that she considered not marrying him because of her health concerns and the possibility of not being able to have children. And it's in that moment, Amanda, and unless I missed it somewhere all the times I've watched it, but it's in that moment we really see them setting the stage for the issues that Shelby's going to have with her health.
Yes, but if it's your first time seeing it, you know that there's something, but we don't know what it is yet.
Yes,
Okay,
that's
and I
true.
just have to go back to one thing really quickly here. You said you were talking about Dylan McDermott. I still can't ever decide if I like him in this movie or not. Like if I like him or I don't like him. It's
Yeah.
really, I never have been able to grasp it.
Yeah. Well, let's just err on the favor of Southern kindness and say we like him for now.
I'll tell you as we go through it what my little red flags are.
Okay. All right.
All right. Well, Shelby and Malin head out for their wedding glam session at Trudy's beauty spot.
Is this just a Southern thing, like getting glam before a wedding? Or I know it's not now, but I do kind of think it might have been back in the day.
Maybe. I mean, definitely not now, but I don't know, maybe.
I
I
think
think
it
people
was.
now, I think people now like come to you more so,
Right.
but they went to the salon.
Yes. And we
And
did for my wedding and we did for your wedding. We
Mhm.
went to get our glam and then
Stuff
it was
done.
just called getting our hair done.
That's right. Well, Truvy is played by Dolly Parton, and she runs the salon, which is hers, with warmth and humor, and she's perfection.
Ugh, amazing performance by Dolly Parton. I don't care what the director said.
Exactly. Maybe he was wondering if she knew how to act because she was just being herself.
That's probably it. It all came so naturally. He thought, are you going to act this out?
Well, newcomer in town is Annelle, and that is played by Daryl Hannah. She's shy and mysterious about her past. And we also
That's right.
meet,
She's been living in Ruth Robeline's boarding house,
yes,
but she
across the
doesn't want to
river.
tell anybody why.
Yeah, across the river. Shirley MacLaine's character is Weezer, and
Oh,
she is
love
the
her.
town's eccentric lady known for her funny and blunt remarks, like when she meets Annelle at this beauty shop and immediately beelines for her, saying, Who are you? I know everyone in this town. And Annelle is just like mortified, you can tell.
Yes.
And Olympia Dukakis, who plays the wise, wealthy, and classy Clary.
Yes. Amanda, the salon scenes are really an important part throughout the entire film because it's there at their special place. I'm tearing up again. That all of the women come together and that's where we see their bonds. And that is really what the heart of the movie is all about.
Yeah, and in fact, if you've seen the play, the stage version,
Yep.
Robert wrote all of it where it takes place in the salon.
Yeah. Every scene is in the salon, right?
Mhm. Yeah, so it's really important.
Yeah. And so in this moment, we see everyone getting ready for the wedding. And as we see that, Shelby experiences a first glimpse into her diabetic episode. And it was
Yes,
tough to watch.
it's tough to watch. This is where we realize what her issue really is. And I mean, we don't know until Malin comes over with the, and then we realize what's going on. But this whole scene is really stunning, and the chemistry of everyone in the scene, but especially Malin and Shelby. When I rewatched this, I'm sorry, y'all. When I rewatched this with my daughters, um, that interaction tracked so perfectly. The
Yes.
way she was so calm and, get her some juice. And she said, "Oh, do we have no juice is better?" And she
Yes.
knew exactly what to do. And as soon as it was over, Shelby said, "Oh, Mama, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." And they had been bantering like, "Nee, nee, 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 nee." But
Yeah.
in that moment, you saw like the real mother-daughter love. And
Yes. It's touching. It's very touching.
it was very touching. All right, now it is time to head to the chapel. And
Go into the chapel.
it is where we get to see Shelby's wedding, and it is over the top.
It is.
And it is covered in pink.
Yes.
I believe
And
her mom, or go ahead, Missy, go
well, I
ahead.
was just going to say, some people might say it's a beautiful affair, but others might say a gaudy affair. But for sure, it's over the top, even for a big Southern wedding.
For sure. And this is when, Shelby's in the beauty shop and tells us ahead of time that her colors are blush and bashful. Her mom disagrees and says that it looks like they hosed the church down with Pepto-Bismol. So
Yes,
it
I
kind of
loved
does
that.
when you see it.
I loved that. And then of course, while we're talking about it, she had 9 bridesmaids, which at the time was a huge wedding. And I loved it when she was explaining it to the girls. She says, "Daddy says an ounce of pretension is worth a pound of manure." In other words, it didn't mean a thing, right?
Right, right.
But it was Pepto-Bismol. It was pink, which she said was her signature color, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Did you know, Amanda? I guess this could have been said in Fascinating Facts that the priest who married Shelby and Jackson in the movie was played by the real Susan's brother, Robert Harling, the man who wrote the movie.
Oh, I didn't know that. That is so
Yes,
sweet.
so sweet. And we see him again as a priest at the end of the movie, just FYI. Spoiler alert. Okay, so the reception is now on. It's at Shelby's house. Her dad has gotten rid of all the birds, and we see music and dancing and plenty of fun between family and friends.
This is the reception of my formative years. Like, this in my mind is like, this is what all the receptions are like. And many wedding receptions I went to were like this. The only thing that was really different, besides the armadillo cake, was some of the like Cajun and Louisiana style music that
Yeah,
they had.
they play the song Jambalaya, Crawfish Pie, Filet Gumbo. And they
Mhm.
played that. The band that was singing at mine and Chris's wedding played that because he was, to represent the Louisiana and him. But you're right. I think the standout of the reception is that armadillo cake. And it has been a joke of every bride I've ever known who was getting married about to their groom, or are you going to have an armadillo cake?
Absolutely. There's also something, I don't know if you have seen this, and real fans, y'all are gonna have to, like, next time you watch it, look for this. It's just a funny tidbit to me of Because, the reception, you see such a collection of people, which I think maybe it's how it is at all weddings, but definitely at big Southern weddings. I mean, it's, a wide array. When she's cutting the armadillo cake and there's a guy that comes up to get a piece of cake and he's wearing like an old Civil War battle hat.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw
was
a bunch
like,
of people
"What?" It's
dressed like that coming out of when they're chasing the car at the end of the reception. And I just thought maybe they were a bunch of Kappa Sigs. At least that's what I'm hoping
It
that
was
they
really
were.
funny though. I was like,
It
"That's hysterical." And like,
ridiculous.
but to just a wide array of people.
Yes, I loved it when Weezer says nothing like a good piece of ass when she cuts the end of the armadillo cake off. I thought that was funny. And then, of course, at the end of the reception, the brothers did indeed use the box of condoms, and the entire car is covered in.
The entire car.
Yeah.
I also have to tell you when she pins the corsage on Shelby before Shelby leaves, she goes to change and she pins the corsage on her pink suit and she tells her, you make sure Jackson Landry takes good care of you. And it just made me think of my own girls, and they'll be going off to college soon. And when she walks out onto the porch to tell her bye, and that realization of like she's gone, she's
Yeah.
she's leaving. She's leaving
Yeah.
her mom.
Sidebar. I'm really glad that this is a podcast because I am in such biting and ugly cry that I am so thrilled that there is no video for
I
our time
know.
together. Oh, it's not a pretty cry. But the movie, then you've had the wedding, you've told them goodbye. Shelby leaves in her beautiful pink suit. The movie, then it transitions to Christmas time, right? And they are at the famous, if you're from that area, the famous Natchitoches Festival of Lights, but there they just call it Festival of Lights. It is a beautiful scene. It shows all the festivity in the air, and it's you can tell like Shelby's come home and she's glad to be there.
Yeah, she's excited to be there for the festival. They've got Louisiana food. I think they've got crawfish, I think she's
I think
serving
it's
up.
shrimp.
It's shrimp. It is.
Yeah. But
It's
there, I
serving up shrimp.
guarantee you there's crawfish there somewhere, probably crawfish pie.
Yeah, they've got shrimp and they've got sweet tea and there's games and everybody's running into each other and just having a great time.
Yeah, it reminded me as I was watching it, although we didn't have a festival of lights growing up in Hattiesburg, we would get some hot chocolate. And you couldn't drive through at the time and get some from Starbucks or Cups, right? Like mom made hot chocolate. We'd hop in the car and we would go and drive down the roads looking at, there was this whole section in Hattiesburg, and we were in Oak Grove, right? But there was this whole section in Hattiesburg that they had these big Christmas cards that were made from wood, and they had different Christmas scenes on them. And we'd drive down and look and we'd ooh and ah. Do you remember that, sister?
Absolutely. And Chains lighting or chain not Chains lighting, chain was it Chains
I think it
lighting
was
store?
Chains Electric.
Electric.
But yes, I know what you're
They
talking
had
about.
the window scene with the Santa and all the pretty lights.
And they like moved. And so
Yeah.
you were really fancy to go down and look at Chains because
Yeah.
it was something special.
Yes, for sure.
It was big things for a little town for us, wasn't it?
That's right. But very special. And
Yes.
in this Christmas section of the movie, it cuts to Malin's house and she's in the kitchen cooking, where it's exactly where our mama would be.
Yeah.
And Shelby is sitting at the bar talking to her mama, and she announces, surprisingly to her mother, that she's pregnant.
Mm.
And this joyous news that you would typically just be over the moon about is met with some pretty mixed emotions.
To say the least.
Yeah, especially, from her mom, who is worried about the health risks for Shelby. And I put myself in Malin's position at this time, thinking about where she's at mentally and emotionally before the baby's here, how just, difficult that would be. You've spent Shelby's whole life tending to her to give her the best opportunity to be healthy and grow into an adult and live the longest life she could. And then doing this, could be could be fatal,
Yeah,
honestly.
it was heartbreaking to watch, and I know it broke Shelby's heart. That's what she wanted. She said, "Mom, you've always wanted me to be happy. And what I want to be happy is I want a baby." And then she said, "Mom, I would rather have 30 minutes of wonderful than a lifetime of nothing special."
I know.
She's literally like begging her mom to
To be
support her
happy.
on this. Yeah, to be happy, to be happy.
Yeah.
But
And
I
it's
mean,
hard. And I understand that perspective of her mom, just so
sure, of course,
protective
protecting her baby.
of her baby girl.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the gang is all together again, but this time it's not at Truvy's salon. It's at Truvy's big Christmas bash. And it's here where Shelby's dad drum pulls everybody together like you do see men do at parties to make the big announcement to the entire community that he's going to be a granddad. So he's thrilled. Excitement is in the air. The group of friends are celebrating, and they're so excited, and you can imagine they are just really overflowing with joy because they didn't think that Shelby could have children. And this is where they begin to understand that it wasn't, Amanda, that she couldn't have children. It was that she shouldn't have children.
Yeah. Big difference.
Big difference. And, did you notice when you were watching it who the first friend was that caught on to why Malin
Weezer.
wasn't happy? It was Weezer.
Mhm. And she tells the others. And it's also not funny, but like the dad being so excited. Can't you just hear it? Like him telling the wife, like, oh, it's going to be fine. She's going to be fine.
Yes. Yes.
We're going to have
Absolutely.
us a grandbaby. Like,
Yeah.
Well, after the announcement, we fast forward to the 4th of July and we see the family celebrating baby Jackson's first birthday. And this scene is festive. They're all excited and singing, and he's bouncing in her lap.
Singing the birthday song.
Mhm. So we know he's been born and, he's now a year old, but it also marks the beginning of a more serious time for Shelby and her health issues. Now, Missy, have you ever noticed that in this scene, we don't see Shelby's face? We see Jack Jr.
Right.
sitting on her lap and he's bouncing, but we never see her face. It's like they had to go back and film the scene and they had to do a body double or something.
Well, I didn't think that, but I have always noticed that she wasn't in the scene. And I thought it was suspense for the audience, right? Like to make us wonder if she had that baby and didn't survive the pregnancy.
Oh.
Yeah.
God.
We'll have to, you know what? Since you just brought that up and I had the same thought, we need to research that and we'll put it in show notes or on social or something and see if we find the answer.
Yeah, good idea. Well, after the party, guess where Malin is headed?
To Truvy's.
Yep.
But guess what? Shelby is going along with her too. She says she wants what she calls a simple haircut. And I think a lot of new moms do this, right? But it really, in this case, it's symbolizing that she needs that change. She needs simplicity in her probably is a very, increasingly complicated life.
Yeah, for sure. I want to talk about this part for just a moment because this part of the movie was really pivotal for me. I think that it symbolizes for the audience this real turning point in their mother-daughter relationship. Because earlier we saw when she was getting married, and they had a lot of back and forth banter.
Yes.
And now she says, she sees that her mom's going to Truby's, and she says she wants to go too. And of course, I'm sure, Malin's still concerned about Shelby, but now she has this precious grandson. It's
Yeah.
not just Shelby anymore. And you see Shelby's heart soften towards her mama. And I think it's because she knows now what it's like to love a child the way her mama loves her. And it stands out to me when they're walking, and Shelby, like I said, she says, "Well, I think I'm going to go too. I'm just going to get it cut. I'm going to get it cut off." And instead, and then this is where you see Malin, her heart has softened towards Shelby now, and
Yes.
understanding she's going through so much because she's got this precious baby and she's dealing with her diabetes. She says, instead of, which would be the predictable, "No, your hair is beautiful," she says, "Well, I just think that's a great idea."
Yeah.
Whereas before it would have been
Been like, "Shelby, don't you cut out that beautiful hair. That your hair is just one of your signature pieces." Yeah.
Yeah, and now they're seeing each other. They're seeing each other in a different way.
So that's such great perspective. And I'm gonna grab another Kleenex.
Yeah, I mean, she has Jack Jr. now. And so
Yeah.
that changes the way she feels about how she didn't want Shelby to have that baby before.
Yeah, of course.
Different now
It
because
is
he's
different now
here.
because now he's here. Okay, so I just want to pause for a little comic relief here to tell you a story about a haircut that I begged my mom for, and she did say no. I was 3 years old, and the style then was kind of like long, and it would flip up just past your shoulders, right? That's what I had when I was 3 years old. And all of a sudden, the popular haircut was a really short pixie haircut. So it was short, really short, and then looked like a lawnmower had been run over your head. And I begged mom, and I begged mom, and I begged mom, and I begged mom. And finally, she said, fine. She took me to the salon. The woman did not have me facing the mirror, and she turned me around, and I looked in the mirror at that jacked up haircut, and I burst into tears, and I still remember it today. And Amanda, every time I looked in the mirror for like 3 and 4 days, I would start just sobbing. Sobbing.
I bet it was a lot easier to take care of than that
Yeah,
long
but
hair.
I bet when mom looked at me, she was wishing she had not said yes to that. But I have to say,
Gosh.
they could have gotten a better wig for Julia Roberts for the haircut, because
It was bad.
if I had looked at that, I would have cried. And she almost did in the movie when she
I
looked at
know.
it. But her mom reassured
Well,
her, which I'm sure mom reassured me and my 4-year-old self.
yeah, and this is where we have the visit where the two go all out and they're going to get manicures after this is after the haircut, Missy.
That's right. They're like, we're getting our nails done too.
Yep, and
Which wasn't common in those days.
No, definitely not like it is now.
It was a big deal.
Mm-hmm. And they get their manicures, and this is when we have the announcement that Malin is going to donate a kidney for Shelby.
When she says that, and she and Shelby are saying it very like nonchalantly, you can feel the friend's concern, like it's palpable, right? Everyone is worried.
Well, and it's a lot more serious. I mean, I think even since then, medical advances have come so far. Not that it's not serious now, but even more serious than now.
True.
To have a kidney transplant like that. And again, this is connected to me to that part I was just talking about where we see the mother-daughter relationship has strengthened, because this is going back to what you said, Missy, about her haircut being awful. But when she looks in the mirror and her hair is awful and she tears up, her mama looks at her and says, "Well, I think it's just precious."
Yeah.
And then she turns back around to go check on Jack Jr. And just, she was gonna be supportive. Like they were gonna support each other.
Yes. And then we see the family together for game night. It's Shelby and her mom and dad and Jackson Jr. and the brothers. And they're playing a game. They're coming together before the transplant surgery and they're laughing. And it's just so sweet. Because don't you know, Amanda, they're like trying to like downplay the
The
seriousness of what's
seriousness.
going on and just connect and be a family. I just think it's precious.
And you know what is so interesting? When Shelby found out Shelby was pregnant, Dad announces it. He's so excited. Malin is devastated. Now they're playing the card games and they're making these jokes. They're joking about
Yes.
can I borrow a kidney? They all think it's hysterical, but not the daddy.
Yeah, because that's his baby now and his wife, and he's
Mhm.
worried. Oh,
Mhm.
yeah, yeah.
So segue to the hospital, and we see the entire family and friends waiting at the hospital to hear the news if the transplant was successful. And good news, it was.
Woo-hoo!
For some reason, literally since I saw this the first time, this line sticks out to me when the doctor comes out and he's like, looks good, looks real good. So it was real good.
Yeah.
And it gives us hope that things are going to be okay for Shelby.
Yes, but as October rolls around, we see the friends all surprise Annelle with a Halloween themed wedding shower. Yep, Halloween themed shower because she's getting married. But Shelby isn't there. And her mom tells the girls that it's due to her work schedule. And then in that next scene, we actually see Shelby at work and we get a glimpse by the way she's standing and holding her back that she's fatigued, right?
Yeah.
And you can't help in that moment but feel there's going to be a tragic turn of events.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I remember she asked her friend, the other nurse, to hand her coat.
Yeah.
Or no, the bag. She didn't want to walk back to get the bag.
Yeah.
She was just really tired. But sure enough, next thing we see, she's at home with Jack Jr. and she's going to take him trick or treating. She's gotten him in his costume and she goes to pick him up and she collapses.
Oh my
Then
gosh.
later, Jackson comes home from work. The phone's off the hook. You could tell she had tried to reach for the phone and she's unconscious.
Supper's boiling on the
over.
yeah.
Jack Jr. sitting on the floor crying.
Oh, it's heartbreaking.
And this leads us to the heart-wrenching hospital scene where Shelby is in the life-threatening coma.
Now, I have to say, the way they filmed Malin and her presence in Shelby's life, like by her bedside, it is so incredibly moving.
And incredibly moving to the point where I'm like, that is exactly what our mom would do.
And what we would do as moms.
Yeah. When she's walking down the hall, that scene where we see Sally Field coming down the hallway of the hospital and she's just walking. She's got her, and she reminds me so much of our mama in
Me
that
too. In every scene, she reminds me.
Yes,
of
but
our
I mean,
mom. But
there,
yes,
especially her speed and determination, like she's ready for the fight. She's there to
yes.
help her baby girl.
Oh, yes.
Well, she's like, what can I do? What needs to be done?
She's taken over.
do it.
She's taken over. Yes.
So we then see Jackson signing the papers, which we know are the do not resuscitate or take her off the ventilation. She's the life support.
Yeah.
And that decision's been made and it's devastating. And I'm going to tell you, the first time I saw this, I did not know that was going to happen. I was 100% when Sally Field was in the room by her bedside doing the physical therapy. Oh, we're doing our exercises today and hold the picture up. Open your eyes, Shelby. Oh, open your eyes. I'm like, 100% thought she was going to wake up. Like there was not any part of me that knew that she was going to die.
Well, I was 20 years old, almost 21 years old when I saw it. And I didn't realize at the time that he was, signing the papers to end life support. I just didn't. No, I
You didn't put
really
that together.
didn't pick up on that. And then, well,
You see the machine. Yeah.
yeah. Oh,
Well, as devastating as it is, we again see Malin's strength.
yeah.
And she stays, she's the only one that stays with Shelby until the end.
Yes. Oh my gosh. And I have to say, sister, the funeral scene is one of the hardest parts of the movie to watch, right?
Yep.
And it's in this scene where her brother is the priest again, which is very poignant, right?
Yep.
But as expected, the friends gather around Malin at the cemetery, and we'd expect that. Of course, that's what friends do. But what has happened in this movie in the last 20 minutes of us watching, I mean, we've just got to kind of unpack.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible.
I mean, Sally Field's performance, it's just, I would sign your petition. I feel like she absolutely deserved an Academy Award, much less a Golden Globe.
Well,
And
right after Shelby passes,
uh-huh.
this is another thing that just reminds me so much of strong Southern women. Like they know what to do. She walks in to where they're all the brothers and the
Yes,
were sitting, and she
yes,
says, "Well, we need to call so and whatever the funeral home is, and we're Jackson. You're going to need to go get Shelby's suit." I mean,
yes.
there,
And she goes to get the baby.
exactly. There's no playing around. Like we've got stuff to do.
Yeah, we've got to get it handled.
We
We've
got
got
to
it
get it
handled.
together.
And even at the funeral, as her friends are loving on her, and they're, speaking into her, she's like, you know, I got, I got to go. I got,
Yeah.
she's like ready to walk and get out of that situation and move on. But those moments there are something else.
Yeah, it's just all of them as a ensemble.
And it's, she had
Powerful.
said that like, okay, let's go, and then all of a sudden they're like, Malin, and then she loses it. She loses
She
it. She
stops
starts
for a
with the why, oh, why, oh, why. She talks about how she could run from there to Texas, but Shelby can't, never could. And will the baby ever know how wonderful its mother is? And right. And I mean, I'm literally a basket case watching this every single time. And then in the midst of all of that heartbreak, we see Clary grab Weezer when Malin says, I just want to hit something. Clary volunteers Weezer.
Yeah, hit Weezer.
Oh, there is nothing like laughter through tears. And actually, Dolly Parton says that in the movie. She says that's her favorite emotion.
Yeah, it's special. And to think her brother wrote this about these women.
I know. He's intuitive is all I can say. That he can write that raw of a script about how women really would truly react.
Yeah.
The things that might be said. But he probably witnessed a lot of it.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
To me, it says how impactful they were on his life.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, and he saw how impactful they were in his mom and sister's lives.
True.
So it's here back at the house with their closest friends and family where Annelle expresses her desire to name the baby after Shelby.
Boy or girl? She says either one. They'll name it
Yep.
Shelby. And Malin says, well, Shelby would be tickled pink.
And she just pushing Jack Jr. on the swing.
Yep. And she says, I think she says something there like, that's the way it's supposed to be. Life goes on.
That's right. That's right.
Oh, well, the movie wraps up on another Easter.
Which is another thing I love about this story in this film, how it goes full circle through the holidays. Even though I know it's not as one calendar year,
Right.
it does circle through all the holidays. And I really love that.
Yeah. And I think based on Jackson Jr.'s age, about 3 years had passed after the wedding scene, right? But
Yeah.
it's during the annual Easter egg hunt that Annelle goes into labor. And then the final scene, Amanda, we see the women waving goodbye to Annelle as she is rushed to the hospital. And we see that indeed life does go on.
And rushed to the hospital by her husband wearing the bunny costume.
That's right.
All right. So what do we think? Did it stand the test of time?
It always does. I mean, it's to me, it's timeless. It is the story of friendship and family. It is funny. It is heartbreaking. It is, in some ways like romantic. It, to me, I know I said Dirty Dancing was my favorite from the 80s, but this has to be it. I have to change. Can I change, sister?
You can change.
Okay, so this is my favorite. I definitely think it stands the test of time, and I think it far surpasses most of the things we see today. What do you think?
It definitely stands the test of time. I think it embodies friendship and, like you said, all of those things, and also life.
Yes.
It's life. And how we love and keep one another.
Yes.
And the way our relationships grow and change.
Yeah, and shape the journey of our life.
Yeah.
And enrich the journey of our life.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, gosh. Well, if you are listening and you have not seen this or you haven't seen it in a long time, run. Do not walk, run to see Steel Magnolias or to see it again.
If you've seen it, I mean, like me, I've seen it many, many times, but I hadn't seen it in a really long time. And as soon as it came on the screen and that music started, I started crying. So as soon as I heard the music, it will touch your heart all over again. You will laugh and you will cry. So don't go without your Kleenex.
And now it's time to give you some clues about our next movie. Get ready for some fun because we're shifting gears from the heart-wrenching drama of a small town life to the laughs of a royal adventure.
Okay, here are your clues. Our next film is a comedy from 1988, so a bit before Steel Magnolias. And it primarily, I want to emphasize primarily, takes place in Queens, New York.
It's a long way from Louisiana, right? The movie showcases a hilarious look at true love, and coincidentally, it also revolves around another wedding.
Okay, so that's 2 clues. Here's the last hint. The movie has plenty of memorable characters and features a fast food restaurant called McDowell's, which is a humorous nod to a well-known burger chain.
That's right. You think you know what it is? Tune in next week to find out if you're right. Thanks for joining us on this emotional journey through Steel Magnolias. Forgive us if we sound like Mr. Snuffleupagus as we talked about it. But don't forget to follow us on social media and also share your thoughts about the movie.
And remember, if you love our podcast, please leave us a review and spread the word.
All right. Bye for now.
Bye. Bye, real fans.